To start out in SolidWorks, you're going to have to open the software. As it opens, it may ask you to agree to a license term. What that basically tells you is that this is an educational version and you're allowed to use it. You get all the tools that you need. However, you can't use it to create a profit for yourself. You can use it for your school projects. So that's what that is saying. Feel free to read it all if you'd like. Once you get to here, you'll see that we have the welcome screen. This is really helpful. You see we have an area to create new things. The first thing we're going to work on is creating parts, because this is kind of the where SolidWorks has to start. Once we have some parts, we can put them together in an assembly, or we can create drawings of those parts. You'll also see recent documents across here. This is an area where you'll see the documents that you yourself have opened on this computer. If you change computers or change seats, this may be blank. It doesn't mean your stuff is gone. You may just actually have to click open right here and go find it in the folder where you saved it. You'll also should see recent folders and some resources over here that could be helpful. For the purpose of this project, we're going to start a new part. As it opens, you'll see that we do get some menu options across the top here that we will refer to some of the time. We get a tabbed menu across here. Features helps us create three-dimensional items, but before we create 3D items, we need 2D shapes, which is what we're going to focus on today, is this sketch one here. And then we've also got some other menus that'll help us do a variety of other things. So those will be helpful. We'll go over those when we need them. Down the side, we have our project panel. So we see the part at the top. We see some history, which is helpful for certain things. Sensors, which is something that if you get way advanced in SolidWorks and you start doing simulations, is something that is helpful. Annotations, materials, which we will be using pretty much right away, not in this drawing, but as soon as we start going 3D, before you turn your first 3D thing in, you will see how to do materials. And then we have our three initial surfaces, the front plane, the top plane, and the right side plane. They all surround what's called an origin. You can see the dot right there when I hover over it, or if I click on it, it turns blue. And you can see that, again, all of these pass through that origin. That origin is the point where all three of the initial planes cross. For our purposes today, we're going to be staying on the front plane. It's real easy to sometimes zoom yourself around. So just so you're aware, the scroll wheel on the mouse will zoom in and out. And if you push it in, it will orbit your view. Sometimes I do that accidentally. So you might see a few times that I'll come up to view orientation and use the cube to go back to my front view. Or I will pick front view out of the list there. Or I will push the space bar to get that cube again, click on the front view. Or later on, you can learn that there's actually shortcut keys that will swing you around to this view. We'll go over those another time. You have a lot of new stuff to learn today. So that's the basic tour. There's also a menu options over here that we'll go over when we need them. We use those rarely. Okay, but first thing we need to do, if we're going to create a 3D part, is we have to start with a sketch. Okay, and today we're not going to make it three-dimensional. We're just going to focus on creating good sketches. So when we have the surface we want to draw on selected, we're going to click Sketch. You will then see the origin appear and all of the sketch tools will be available. Where it used to say Sketch, it now says Exit Sketch and is shaded. Okay, think about that as like an on-off switch. So currently, the sketch features are currently on. And I'm selected the front plane, so I'm drawing on the front plane. I'm going to go ahead and get my line tool. And a really good habit to get into is whenever you start, you want to start out by drawing from the origin. If you start everything you do from the origin, you will have to do less dimensioning to get the same results, which is always helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to scroll up. Or pull up. You'll notice it's telling me about how long it is. I'm not worried about that because you can see with it going out 3 decimal places in millimeters, those are 10,000ths of a millimeter in that last digit. Excuse me. So we're going to make it the right size after it's drawn. So don't worry about that. The one thing I do want you to worry about is direction. So if you want to draw straight up in the air, you should wait till you get that little yellow thing that you see right there. That is telling you you're drawing vertically straight. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a vertically straight line. And I'm not going to continue, but you'll notice I could continue to draw if I needed to draw a horizontal line over or something like that. If I push escape on the keyboard, I get out of the drawing tool. So then I can start it again. And now I'm going to draw a horizontal line. If you haven't been doing these already, I'd like for you to draw both lines as well, both a horizontal line and a vertical line. Okay. Now, off of the horizontal line, I'd like you to draw, and you can do this all at once, by the way. I'm not gonna back up and show you that, but you feel free to do this all at once. But I'm gonna draw an angled line. So just one that comes up like this. All right. Now I'm gonna go ahead and push escape. So right now, some of these lines are black and some of them are blue, but you'll notice all of them are what's called underdefined, meaning they know where they are. Like this line knows it starts at the origin, it goes to the right a certain number of millimeters, doesn't really know how many, horizontally, which is good. If I now take my Smart Dimension tool and click on it, I can now set this at 50 millimeters. So it changes that line to be exactly 50 millimeters, which wasn't a big change. This one here, though, will be a bigger change because right now it's at 60. And I'm going to change it to 100. So you'll notice that gets quite a bit taller. But both of those are now fully defined. I now have this angled one. So there's a couple different ways I could define where this point is. And honestly, it would depend a lot on what information you knew. So for example, I could go from this point to this point and pull down and tell it to be 30 millimeters. That didn't make the line 30 millimeters. It made the change from this point to that point horizontally 30 millimeters apart. What I would then need to do is pick the same 2 points and change their vertical change to be 40 millimeters. And so basically from the starting point, 30 millimeters over, 40 millimeters up, it makes the line between them. And if you knew that information, that's a great way to do that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete those 2 dimensions I just made. Mostly because a lot of times we'll know it slightly differently. So maybe I measured this edge on something and found out that it is in fact 50 millimeters long. So I'll type in 50 millimeters. Then, as I did before, if I click this and this, I now get an angular measurement. So it's now telling me the angle between these two. So if I want to, I can go ahead and set this at 130. Now it's at a 130-degree angle coming up here. This is the way I'd like you to leave it. Even though both methods are technically right, you can see it's slightly different. But when I grade this, I want to see both the angular measurement and this is called an aligned measurement. Okay, it follows the line. I'm now going to add something that we use a lot, which is called a tangent arc. Tangent means, as you can see on the icon, the line comes in and touches basically this arc at one point. Even if you tune this arc into a full circle, it would only ever touch at that one single point. If you're not in advanced math, this may be a new concept for you. Otherwise, yes, tangency is something that you might see in algebra and geometry. So I'm going to go ahead and pick tangent arc. By picking this point, it's making it tangent to that line. So you can see as I grow this arc, it's kind of doing its thing. So I'm going to make an arc up here and click. And you'll see I could continue to make tangent arcs, but I'm not going to. I'm going to go ahead and hit Smart Dimension. And in order for this arc to be defined, I'm going to define it by telling it that the measurement is 35 millimeters in radius, which will change it slightly. And you'll see it's still underdefined even though it turned black. The whole thing didn't turn black. This point is still blue. Okay? Now, I could dimension this, but I'm going to show you a different way using some of these relationships. So you'll notice I have vertical and horizontal relationships. So up here, you'll see a lot of these tools, just like I did with tangent arc, have a little drop down next to them. So if it has an arrow next to it, there are more tools hiding underneath. So I'm going to go over to the line tool, drop this down, and pick up center line. Center lines are really helpful for a lot of things. In this case, I'm going to draw a center line from here to that point right there. And then I'm going to hit escape. And you're going to say, it didn't change. You're right, it didn't change. However, I want this line to actually be vertical. I want this arc to stop when it gets vertical to its center. So I'm going to click once on the line, and you'll notice this little shortcut menu comes up. And I have options like make horizontal and make vertical. So I'm going to click make vertical. So you'll see it backs it back up. Okay, and I am now fully defined because the arc now starts here, tangent to this line. That's what this relationship says. It has a radius of 35 millimeters, and the end point is directly vertically above the center point. Okay, this is all of the line work I want you to do. I'm going to add just a couple more things up here. Okay, so sometimes we do use other shapes. So I am going to take a corner rectangle, and I am going to come off the top here and draw just a rectangle by clicking the opposite corner. The nice part is what I can do now is I can make this 50 millimeters tall, and I can make this 25 millimeters wide. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now use the circle tool to make an overlapping shape. So first off, you'll see that this is an enclosed shape. That's why it's shaded, because this box is checked. But now I'm going to go ahead and click on the top here. And as you can see, I'm getting on the very middle of this line. And I'm going to click that. And I'm going to come over and click the endpoint. What this does for me is I should actually be fully defined still. And as you can see, I am. That is because this center ends up directly on this center midpoint of this line. Excuse me. And it ends tangent, or basically ends right at this point here. So that's very helpful. But what you'll notice is I've got 3 different enclosed areas right now, and I really don't want multiple enclosed areas inside my sketch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the trim tool. So I'm going to click trim, and I'm going to pick trim to closest. This is the easiest trim to use. When I click on a part of a shape now, it should trim it away. You'll notice I'm no longer shaded here until I trim this portion away. Now it's asking me a question that I'm going to say yes to because I know what it's saying. You shouldn't answer a question if you don't know what it's saying. But what it's doing is it's removing that segment, that line segment there, which had a relationship with the center right here. So as you can see, I am now underdefined again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my dimension tool, and I am going to give that a diameter, or I'm sorry, a radius, and that fully defines my shape for me. So this is what I have going on. By the way, to move your view like I just did, you have to hold Control on the keyboard, push that mouse in, and you can move that around. So this is the shape I want you to use. Before you save, I want you to go ahead and go to View Orientation and switch to Isometric. It's this one right here. You can see it also you can get to it by pushing Control 7. So either way, go ahead and get to that view and zoom in a little bit so we can see it. Like this. It's starting to look actually kind of like one of those foam fingers. So this is what I want to save. Okay? Saving is very important because for certain of these files, if you don't save it under the proper name, when you go to turn it in, you will get a points reduction. Okay? So here's what I need you to do. You're going to go File, and you're going to click Save. Now, for me, it's already looking in my drive because I've already saved documents. But for you, it may be looking in this General Documents folder. This is dangerous because the documents folder here only exists on your computer. If your computer breaks, stops working for some reason, or I move your seat, you won't have access to this file anymore if you put it here. That is the worst. So do not put it here. Scroll down in this area to where it says this PC and drop this down, or maybe it's easier for you to just click on it, one of the two. The very bottom of this list, whether you do it in the big window or scroll down in the smaller window, you should find a drive under network locations that looks like your login name. Okay, this one here. It'll say //ccsd.d5/home/students, and it'll look like your login name. It'll also be called your H drive. Okay, double click that to open it. Now I like folders, and I'll tell you it's easiest if you do folders. But what I need you to do is, if you want to, you can make a folder for the class by clicking New Folder and then giving it a name, which I'm just going to call mine SolidWorks. And once I go inside of it, I'm actually, in this case, since I'm only making one file for this project, I'm not going to make a new folder for this project specifically. But if you'd like to keep very organized, you're probably going to want to make new folders for each project. Okay? Now, the name. The name is highly important. So you're going to want to name it your last name. And then the minus sign, which is the dash, and then the name of the actual assignment. In this case, it is defined sketch. Okay, so last name dash defined sketch, because that's what I'm grading it for. Did you fully define that sketch? So go ahead and save this in your folder, exactly like this. Okay. Now, if you want to, you can go ahead and get out of SolidWorks, and your teacher will show you how to actually turn this in so you can get credit for doing this and move on to the next assignment.